Inner power focus.
Most people spend their whole lives looking outward. They wait for someone to tell them they are good enough. They chase applause that fades the moment the room goes silent. But there comes a moment, a powerful moment, when a person finally turns inward and realizes the most important approval in life is their own. That moment is the beginning of power. And this is where your story begins. Part 1. Ethan Walker was 29 years old when he finally understood something that changed the course of his life. He had spent years trying to be accepted. He followed trends he did not care about. He said yes when he wanted to say no. He exhausted himself trying to fit into places where he never truly belonged. Every day felt like an audition, and he was tired of performing. One cold morning he stood in front of his bathroom mirror. His reflection looked exhausted, as if it had carried the weight of too many expectations. Ethan whispered 4 words that felt heavier than they sounded. I do not know myself. For the first time he realized his life had been shaped by outside noise. He had allowed the world to pull him in 100 directions. His attention was scattered. His energy was thin. His purpose was lost beneath layers of fear and hesitation. That morning Ethan made a quiet decision. He would not chase approval anymore. He would chase clarity. He would turn inward. And he would begin rebuilding the foundation of his life from the inside out. It was a simple choice, but it felt like opening the door to a new world. He began with awareness. He watched where his attention traveled each day. He noticed how often he compared himself to others. He noticed how the opinions of strangers shaped his confidence. He noticed how much time he spent worrying about things he could not control. And with each realization, he felt a small shift inside him, like pieces of himself gently falling back into place. Ethan remembered something he had once read from Napoleon Hill. The mind is a powerful force when directed with purpose. He repeated those words like a promise. If he could learn to direct his attention inward, he could change the course of his life. He could build inner strength that no one could take away from him. He could build clarity that could cut through any confusion. He could build discipline that outlasted every distraction. He began to train his mind the same way an athlete trains the body. Every morning he spent a few minutes in silence. No phone. No noise. Just breathing and observing his thoughts without judgment. At first it felt uncomfortable. His mind wandered. His emotions jumped around. But slowly he discovered something powerful. Silence was showing him who he really was. In the quiet he saw his fears. He saw his desires. He saw the battles he had been avoiding, and in that honest space he found clarity. He realized he had lived as a passenger in his own story. He reacted instead of choosing. He followed instead of leading. But now he felt something new. A rising strength. A quiet confidence. A sense of direction that came from within, not from the world outside. Scripture spoke to him in a deeper way during this time. Proverbs 4:23 Guard your heart with all diligence, for from it flow the springs of life. He understood it differently now. His heart, his inner world, was the source of everything he created in his outer life. If he protected it, his life would grow in the direction of peace, purpose, and strength. If he neglected it, chaos would follow. To strengthen his mind, he began studying the lives of people who had done extraordinary things by focusing inward first. He read about Florence Nightingale, who defied society to follow a calling that came from deep within her spirit. She did not wait for approval. She acted on conviction. And her inner clarity changed the world of medicine forever. He studied George Washington Carver, who was born with nearly every disadvantage yet rose to shape agriculture with brilliance and humility. Carver did not waste time seeking validation. He invested it in knowledge and growth. His focus became his weapon. His vision became his gift to the world. Ethan realized something simple but profound. Greatness does not start with applause. It starts with awareness. It starts with quiet decisions made in silence. It starts with choosing to grow even when no one is watching. He felt inspired by these examples, not because they were famous but because they were focused. They built themselves before they built their legacy. One afternoon, Ethan sat at a coffee shop with his notebook. He wrote a question across the top of the page. Who am I becoming? The answer was not instant, but the process of seeking it gave him strength. He wrote about the habits he wanted to form. He wrote about the fears he needed to release. He wrote about the discipline he wanted to build. And with each word he felt his mind sharpen like steel being shaped in fire. He also wrote down Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But he understood now that strength was not a feeling that appeared magically. Strength was built through practice, through choices, through self-control, through focus. He saw his faith not just as a source of comfort but as a source of power that could shape his thoughts and actions. As he continued this inward journey, his life slowly began to shift. He stopped reacting to every opinion. He stopped absorbing other people's stress. He said no more often. He moved with intention instead of impulse. He listened to his intuition instead of his fear. The more he focused on his inner world, the stronger his outer world became. What surprised him most was the peace. Not the loud kind that comes from excitement, but the deep, steady kind that feels like quiet confidence. The kind of peace that cannot be shaken by criticism or chaos. The kind of peace that leaders carry. Ethan felt it growing within him like a seed watered every day with attention and discipline, and he realized something important. To focus on yourself is not selfish. It is necessary. It is strategic. You cannot build a strong life on a weak foundation. You cannot influence others if you are constantly empty. You cannot live your purpose if your mind is scattered. Focusing inward was not an escape. It was preparation. Ethan felt a new chapter beginning. He understood now that greatness demands separation before elevation. He knew he had to create boundaries. He knew he had to protect his energy. He knew he had to direct his attention with intention. Because the moment he shifted his focus inward, he stopped living as a passenger. He became the driver of his own destiny, and this was only the beginning. Part 1 of his transformation had begun with one simple decision: to look within, to listen within, to rise from within. The journey ahead would be challenging, but the foundation was finally strong, and Ethan was ready. Engaging hook. There comes a moment when a person realizes that discipline is not just a habit. It is the dividing line between the life they dream of and the life they settle for. Most people pray for a better life while refusing to change the choices that built the one they have. But a few rare individuals discover something extraordinary. When you master yourself, you multiply your life. And this is where the true journey begins. Part 2. Ethan Walker felt different. He could not fully explain it, but something inside him was shifting. Ever since he started focusing inward, he felt a new kind of strength rising in him. It was not loud or dramatic. It was quiet, steady, and powerful. Like a fire that begins with a single spark but grows into something that can light an entire night. He found himself thinking deeply about one simple truth. The only person he could truly change was himself. For years he had wasted time trying to fix relationships, fix environments, fix people who did not want to be fixed. But now he understood the power of self-mastery. He could not control the storm outside, but he could build a stronger ship inside. And that ship was his mind. Point 1. Evening. Ethan sat alone on his porch watching dark clouds gather in the sky. A storm was coming. The wind grew sharp. Leaves swirled around him. He felt the air shift. The scene reminded him of life itself. You cannot command the sky. You cannot quiet the thunder. But you can build yourself into a person who walks through storms without breaking. The thought hit him so hard he whispered it aloud. I have to build myself. That idea became a turning point. He began reading Romans 12:2 with new understanding. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. For the first time the verse felt like a blueprint. Not just spiritual advice but practical instruction. The world reacted. But transformation required renewal. Daily. Persistently. With intention. Ethan realized he had spent most of his life drifting. Drifting into habits. Drifting into crowds. Drifting into distractions. But clarity did not come from drifting. It came from focusing. It came from choosing. It came from building. Every morning he forced himself to wake a little earlier. At first it was unpleasant. His body resisted. His mind complained. But Ethan understood something Napoleon Hill wrote repeatedly. Every act of discipline plants a seed of greatness. So he pushed himself. He chose discomfort. He chose the harder path. And little by little the discipline began to strengthen him. His confidence grew. His inner world found order. His thoughts became clearer and calmer. During this time, Ethan found himself thinking often about Harriet Tubman. He admired her courage, her faith, her focus. She did not wait for applause. She listened inward. She trusted the quiet voice inside her more than the loud noise of the world. She mastered her fear. She mastered her focus. She mastered her mission. And because she mastered herself, she became a light for others in the darkest conditions imaginable. Ethan asked himself a question that challenged him deeply. If Harriet Tubman could walk through danger with such strength, what excuse did he have for not mastering his own life? It humbled him. It sharpened him. It reminded him that leadership begins inside long before it shows outside. He began to notice the chains within himself. Chains of distraction. Chains of doubt. Chains of seeking validation from people who did not even know his purpose. But now he understood something powerful. These chains could be broken. Not with emotion. Not with wishful thinking. But with discipline. Every day offered him a choice. Scroll or study. Delay or begin. Hide or grow. Comfort or progress. Each choice mattered. Each choice cast a vote for the future he wanted or the future he feared. He thought of Booker T. Washington, who walked miles for an education, who cleaned classrooms just to stay enrolled, who built his future brick by brick with no guarantees. Washington did not have perfect conditions. But he had will. He had focus. He had discipline. And that was enough to change history. Ethan wrote 3 words in his notebook. I need discipline. He knew it was the key. The passport. The foundation. Without discipline, his dreams were only fantasies. With discipline, they could become inevitable. So he began practicing discipline in small ways. He cleaned his room every morning. He prepared his meals instead of eating whatever was convenient. He set aside dedicated time to read, to pray, to reflect. He turned off his phone an hour earlier each night. The actions were small, but the impact was great. He felt stronger, more stable, more anchored. One night he read Matthew 7:24. The wise man built his house on rock. The floods came. The winds blew. But the house stood firm because its foundation was solid. Ethan felt the meaning sink into him. Focus on yourself creates the rock. Discipline builds the structure. Faith strengthens the walls. When the storms of life come and they will, you do not fall because you have built yourself correctly. He began to see discipline not as punishment but as protection. Not as restriction but as direction. Each act of discipline became a brick in the house he was building for his future self. And the more he built, the more he felt the invisible structure forming within him. People around him noticed the difference. He did not try to impress anyone. He was not louder. He was not trying to stand out. But he moved differently. He spoke differently. He carried himself with calm confidence. He brought peace into rooms. He walked with clarity and purpose. He realized something profound. Influence does not come from seeking attention. Influence comes from alignment. When your inner world is ordered, your outer world gains power. Not everyone understood his new path. Some people criticized him. Some called him distant. Some accused him of changing too much. But Ethan learned a simple truth. People who benefit from your weakness will always fear your strength. And he was not living for their comfort. He was building for his purpose. Every day he made one more disciplined decision. Some days were easy. Some days were hard. Some days he felt unstoppable. Other days he wanted to quit. But he kept going. Because he knew what he was building mattered. He knew his future self was counting on him. And he knew the storms of life would come one day. And he wanted to be ready. One morning Ethan looked at his reflection and felt something he had not felt in years. Pride. Not in a shallow way. Not because he looked good. But because he had finally taken control of his mind. He had begun mastering himself. And he knew self-mastery was the gateway to everything he wanted to become. He whispered quietly. Keep going. And he meant it. For the first time in his life, he was not living by accident. He was living by design. And the journey of transformation was just beginning. Part 3 with HOK. The truth is simple. The moment you stop running from yourself is the moment your life begins. Most people never reach that moment. They fill their lives with noise so they never have to hear their own truth. But those who dare to enter silence discover something extraordinary. They find the key that unlocks their next level. Part 3 begins here. Silence is full of answers, yet most people are terrified of it. In this modern world, noise has become the escape of the anxious. Every notification is a distraction. Every conversation is a way to avoid the questions buried inside the heart. People fear stillness because it forces them to face their doubts, their regrets, and their dreams that have been waiting too long for action. But if you dare to sit in silence even for a moment, you will discover something priceless. Clarity. The strongest minds are not built in chaos. They are built in solitude. It is in quiet places that storms settle. It is in stillness that fragments become whole. The world teaches you to move fast, to hustle constantly, to stay busy so you can feel productive. But true elevation begins when you learn to pause with intention. Success is not created in noise. It is created in the moments when you turn inward. Isaiah 30:15 reminds us that in quietness and trust shall be your strength. Not in noise, not in busyness, not in chaos. In quietness. When you spend time alone, without distractions, without noise, without validation, you finally meet the raw, honest version of yourself. That moment may feel uncomfortable, even painful, but it is the birthplace of every real change. Your fears rise in silence. Your insecurities echo. But so do your dreams, your values, your deeper purpose. Silence becomes a mirror. And if you have the courage to look, you will see the next version of yourself waiting to be born. Nikola Tesla understood this truth. While others chased noise, applause, and attention, he embraced solitude. Hours, sometimes days of deep mental stillness. He built inventions in his imagination before he ever touched a tool. His silence was not emptiness. It was power. He discovered what most people never realize. Solitude is a portal to genius. You do not need to be an inventor to use this power. You just need courage. The courage to turn off the world for a moment. The courage to sit alone, without music, without messages, without chatter. Just you and your mind. And in that silence, listen. Not with fear, but with faith. Trust that what rises inside you is exactly what you need to hear. We live in a world that celebrates busyness as if it is strength. People show off overfilled calendars and burn out like trophies. But busyness is not progress. It is distraction. It is survival mode. You were not born to survive. You were born to create, to lead, to elevate. And every great leader knows that retreat comes before advancement. Listening comes before speaking. Self-understanding comes before influence. So make stillness a ritual, even if only for 5 minutes a day. Sit. Breathe. Ask yourself real questions. What am I avoiding? What am I chasing? Who am I becoming? You do not need the world's approval. You need your own awareness. The stronger your relationship with yourself, the less you need from others. You stop begging for validation. You stop bending for acceptance. You become grounded not in noise but in knowing. That is where true freedom begins. When you can sit alone and feel complete. When silence becomes sanctuary instead of punishment. That is when your power multiplies. Stillness is not the absence of movement. It is the presence of purpose. And once you embrace silence, you begin to understand the second part of focus. Direction. When your attention is scattered, your life becomes scattered. You chase too many things. You start 10 goals and finish none. You pour your energy into countless directions and none of them yield results. But when your focus becomes singular, momentum builds. And with momentum, power becomes unavoidable. A river does not carve a canyon because it is fast. It carves it because it is relentless. That is the difference between the average and the exceptional. Most people dabble. They dabble in dreams. They dabble in goals. They dabble in self-improvement. They quit when pressure comes. They pivot when results do not appear instantly. They live lives filled with fragments. Shattered potential left behind like broken pieces of a puzzle. James 1:8 warns us that a double-minded person is unstable in all their ways. The unstable person is not bad. They are simply unfocused. They say yes to too much. They jump from one idea to another. They abandon hard work whenever discomfort arrives. Focus brings order. Focus brings strength. The moment you choose one pursuit and pour yourself into it fully, the universe begins to respond. Thomas Edison did not change the world by chasing many interests. He chose one obsession: innovation. Thousands of experiments. Countless failures. But he persisted. And because he stayed the course, he lit the world. That kind of impact is not reserved for the gifted. It is reserved for the focused. What if you stayed committed long enough to grow? Long enough for your roots to reach deep? Long enough for your name to mean something? Think of how powerful you would become if you stopped quitting. If you stopped switching paths every time life pushed back. Mastery is born on the other side of perseverance. So ask yourself, what is your one thing? What pursuit sets your soul on fire? Choose it. Write it down. Let everything else fall away. Say no to distractions. Say no to noise. Say no to people who pull you away from your purpose. Every day pour yourself into your mission. And when doubt comes, remember your decision. You chose this. You are building this. You will finish this. Because when you focus on yourself with intensity, you move from chaos to clarity. And clarity is more than peace. Clarity is power. It is the soil where transformation grows. Now you must learn to protect that clarity. Protect your focus like a fortress. Not with anger but with discipline. Not with walls but with standards. Your attention is your most valuable currency. Spend it wisely. Every day the world will try to steal it. Messages, demands, arguments, gossip, noise. But you do not owe your energy to everything that calls your name. You are building something sacred. Your mindset. Your future. Your destiny. Do not let distractions rob you of what you are constructing. Nehemiah said, "I am doing a great work, so I cannot come down." That sentence is your shield. You are doing a great work. Do not come down. Do not lower your energy to match the chaos around you. Do not dilute your purpose to avoid criticism. Stay at your post and keep building. Not every battle is yours. Not every invitation deserves your yes. Build filters for your focus. Ask yourself, does this align with my mission? If not, walk away. Silence at the right moment is wisdom. Every no you speak to distraction is a yes to your destiny. This is how your focus sharpens. This is how your future expands. This is how your strength multiplies. Think of your focus as fuel. Why waste it on roads that lead nowhere? Why spend it on people who drain more than they give? Protect your energy like your future depends on it, because it does. Highly focused individuals are not lucky. They are intentional. They do not stumble into peace. They create it. They do not accidentally grow. They cultivate the environment where growth happens. You must do the same. When you protect your focus, everything changes. Your mind clears. Your life accelerates. Your results multiply. And finally, you begin to see what you were capable of all along. Because this is what it means to focus on yourself. To silence noise. To choose direction. To guard your purpose. To walk into your becoming. Part 3 ends here. If you want Part 4, just tell me. Part 4. The fire UFE. The engaging hook. There comes a moment in every person's life when the world goes quiet for just a second. In that silence you hear a whisper. Not from others. Not from the world. But from yourself. And that whisper asks a simple but dangerous question. Are you becoming the person you promised yourself you would be? Part 4. Marcus woke up before sunrise, long before the world outside his window began to move. He sat at the edge of his bed staring into the soft darkness. The house was quiet, but his mind was full. He felt something stirring inside him. Something that had been silent for years but was now rising again. It was a feeling he could no longer ignore. The feeling that he was meant for more than the life he had been settling for. He got up slowly and walked to the small desk he kept in the corner of his room. On it sat an empty notebook and a pen. He had bought them months ago with the promise that he would start writing down his goals, but every day he found a reason to avoid it. Not enough time. Too tired. Maybe tomorrow. Excuses are comfortable until they become chains. Today felt different. He opened the notebook. The blank page stared at him. His chest tightened. Writing his goals down meant facing them. And facing them meant no more hiding behind excuses. He wrote 3 words at the top of the page. My great work. A simple phrase. But as he wrote it, something shifted. It felt like he was making a declaration. A promise. Not to the world but to himself. Marcus had spent his whole life helping others. Fixing problems. solving crises that were never his. He was the man everyone called when they were stuck. The dependable one. The strong one. The shoulder, the support, the bridge. But in helping everyone else cross their rivers, he had never crossed his own. As he sat there, he remembered something his grandfather told him when he was 12 years old. Son, if you do not choose your path, the world will choose it for you. And the world does not always choose with kindness. Marcus took a deep breath. He needed clarity. He needed direction. He needed focus. And most of all, he needed courage. The courage to choose himself. He wrote his first goal. Build a business that gives people hope. It sounded vague, but it felt right. It felt like the spark he needed. Pause. He looked at the sentence. It was good, but it was not enough. A goal without a plan is nothing more than a wish. He knew that. Napoleon Hill had taught him that through the pages of Think and Grow Rich. Desire backed by purpose creates power. But desire without action creates frustration. Marcus closed his eyes and whispered softly, "Show me what I need to see." When he opened them again, the second goal came to him. Learn one new skill every day. Not a big skill. Not a complicated one. Just something that moved him forward. Something that sharpened his mind and expanded his possibilities. He wrote it down. Then he wrote a third goal. Protect my focus. It was the hardest one. Because Marcus knew his greatest enemy was not failure. It was distraction. Small things that stole big time. People who drained his energy. Voices that pulled him away from his purpose. Noise pretending to be urgency. He set the pen down and looked at the page. 3 simple goals. But together they felt like the foundation of a new life. As he stared at the words, he remembered a teaching he had read many times. Every great transformation begins with a decision. A decision to stop living in reaction and start living with intention. And then he remembered something even deeper. Something he had ignored for years. You do not rise to your goals. You fall to your standards. Marcus had goals. But he had not built the standards to support them. Standards are the quiet rules you set for yourself. The ones no one sees. The ones no one celebrates. The ones that build you from the inside out. So he wrote again. My standards. Wake up early even when tired. Do the work even when unmotivated. Protect my mind from negativity. Choose discipline over comfort. Speak to myself with strength, not doubt. He looked at the list. This was the foundation he needed. Not flashy. Not loud. But strong and steady. The kind of foundation that holds up a dream when life gets heavy. Suddenly his phone buzzed. A friend asking him to come help with something. Normally Marcus would have said yes immediately. But this time he paused. He asked himself the question he had written the night before. Does this align with my mission? He whispered softly. I am doing a great work, so I cannot come down. He typed a simple reply. I cannot today. And then he put his phone face down. It felt strange. Uncomfortable. Almost wrong. But it also felt powerful. Marcus stood and walked toward the small mirror in his hallway. He looked into his own eyes. For the first time he truly saw himself. Not who he had been, but who he was becoming. A man learning to honor his own time. A man learning to choose his own path. A man learning to feed the fire within instead of extinguishing it for others. He whispered the words softly. Focus is my fuel. As he walked outside for his morning run, the air felt different. Crisp. Clear. Powerful. Every step felt intentional. Purposeful. Grounded. He thought about the people he admired. Men and women who built great things. They were not the smartest. They were not the luckiest. They were simply the most focused. They fed their fire daily. They guarded it fiercely. They protected their mind like a treasure. Marcus had never done that for himself. But he was doing it now, and somewhere deep inside he felt a rising confidence. A strength he had not felt in years. It was the strength that comes when a person finally decides to stop being a spectator in their own life and start being the architect. He reached the end of the street, turned around, and whispered, This is my time to build. And for the first time in a long time he believed it. If you want part 5, just tell me. Part 5. The battle. An engaging hook. There is a moment in every journey when the world stops being your biggest obstacle and you realize the truth. The real battle is not outside. It is inside. And the voice you choose to listen to will decide the life you build. Part 5. Marcus woke before his alarm. Something inside him pulled him from sleep, a quiet force he had never felt so clearly before. The room was cold, but his mind was awake. He lay still for a moment, listening to the soft hum of the world outside. For the first time he felt a calm certainty. Today mattered. Not because of anything dramatic waiting for him, but because of something deeper. Today he would decide who he was becoming. He sat up and rubbed his hands together. A thought drifted into his mind. Growth is a choice you have to remake every single day. Yesterday's discipline does not guarantee today's success. You must recommit. Again and again. He walked to the kitchen, made a cup of coffee, and sat at the small table by the window. As he sipped, he opened his notebook. The page from yesterday stared back at him. His goals. His standards. His declaration of purpose. But beneath it all was something he had not yet written. Something he knew he needed to face. The inner voice that had controlled him for years. The voice that quietly whispered reminders of failure, doubt, and fear. You are not ready. You are not enough. You will fail again. Marcus closed his eyes and breathed in deeply. That voice had followed him since childhood. It was familiar. It was comfortable. And it was dangerous. It had kept him small for years. But this journey required something different. This journey required him to build a new mind. He whispered a sentence to himself. A man cannot build a new life with an old voice. He began writing again. Not goals. Not plans. But truth. The truth he had been avoiding for years. I have been sabotaging myself with fear. I have been holding myself back to stay safe. I have been listening to the wrong voice. The words stung, but they also freed him. Napoleon Hill had written about this battle many times. The mind is a battlefield. The enemies are fear, doubt, and indecision. And if you do not conquer them, they will conquer you. Marcus set the pen down and leaned back. He remembered a lesson from Hill that had always stayed with him but never truly landed until now. You must take possession of your mind. No one will do it for you. Not family. Not friends. Not even God. You must choose who you allow to speak inside your head. Suddenly his phone lit up with notifications. Messages. News. Reminders. The world calling for his attention. For a moment he felt the familiar pull. The urge to check everything. To react. To drown his thoughts in noise. But he resisted. He whispered to himself. My mind belongs to me. He put the phone aside and went for a walk. The early morning air greeted him with a cool embrace. The sky was pale and soft, the kind of morning that feels like a clean page waiting to be written on. As he walked, he reflected on something he had learned about himself. He had two voices in his mind. One pushed him forward. One pulled him back. And whichever one he fed became stronger. The pulling voice was the voice of fear. It reminded him of every mistake he had made. Every dream he had abandoned. Every time he had fallen short. It said things meant to keep him safe. Things like stay where you are. Do not take risks. Do not aim too high. Do not dream too big. The pushing voice was gentle but steady. It told him to rise. To focus. To believe. It said things like you can do more. You can become more. You can rise above who you were. Marcus realized something important in that moment. The voice he fed would become the narrator of his future. When he returned home, he wrote a question at the top of a new page. Which voice am I feeding? He paused, stared at the sentence, then wrote his answer. I have been feeding fear. It was painful to admit. But painful truth is better than comfortable denial. Comfortable denial is how people stay stuck for decades. Honest truth is how people grow. He closed his notebook and stood in front of the mirror again. He looked at himself carefully. Not with judgment but with awareness. Awareness is the beginning of transformation. You cannot change what you refuse to see. He whispered to his reflection. I am the gatekeeper of my mind. That sentence felt powerful. Like armor. Like a shield. He repeated it again. I am the gatekeeper of my mind. Marcus walked into the living room and turned off the television. He placed his phone in a drawer. He sat in silence for a full minute, uncomfortable at first, but then something surprising happened. His mind began to clear. The noise faded. And in the quiet he heard a truth he had ignored for years. Your life will rise to the level of the thoughts you choose to entertain. He remembered a quote he once wrote down. A man's mind is like a garden. If he does not plant purposeful seeds, weeds will grow by themselves. Fear is a weed. Doubt is a weed. Negativity is a weed. If you do not pull them out, they take over. He realized he had been letting weeds grow for years. Marcus stood up and felt a new sense of confidence. A quiet one. Not loud. Not dramatic. But steady. Honest. Strong. He returned to his notebook and wrote 3 new commitments. I will monitor my thoughts. I will challenge my negative beliefs. I will speak to myself like a leader, not a victim. He knew this was the real work. Not the goals. Not the plans. Not even the discipline. The real work was mastering the voice within. Because once a person conquers their inner world, the outer world becomes easier. As the day progressed, Marcus felt different. He walked with more purpose. He spoke with more clarity. He made decisions faster. He felt grounded. He felt awake. That evening he sat on his porch and watched the sun set. A warm glow spread across the sky, and for the first time in years he felt hope. Not the fragile kind that depends on luck, but the strong kind that comes from inner certainty. He whispered softly. I choose my voice. I choose my direction. I choose my life. And in that moment he felt something powerful. The battle within was no longer something he feared. It was something he was ready to win. If you want part 6, final part, just tell me. Part 6. The master of your destiny. Engaging hook. Every great life begins the same way. With a choice. A moment where you decide that no one else will steer your ship, no one else will write your story, and no one else will define your worth. That moment is now. Part 6. Elena sat quietly in her study, the golden light of the evening sun filtering through the window. She had come a long way. Months ago, she was exhausted by life, reacting to every opinion, chasing validation, and losing herself in the noise of the world. Today she felt something different. A quiet power. A deep knowing that her life was hers to build. Napoleon Hill wrote about this principle often. The mind that is focused, disciplined, and directed is unstoppable. It is like a magnet pulling opportunity, success, and influence into alignment. Elena realized she had been learning this lesson slowly, step by step, brick by brick, thought by thought. She picked up her journal. The first page she wrote months ago felt heavy now, full of scattered ideas and fear. She flipped through the pages. Each one told a story of transformation. Of choices made, of boundaries set, of fears faced and defeated. She smiled. This was proof. The strongest foundations are built in silence and consistency. Elena thought about her mornings, once chaotic and rushed, now structured and intentional. Every day she started with clarity. She reflected, planned, and focused. Not because she had to, but because she had discovered the power of self-mastery. The discipline to focus on herself first was not selfish. It was strategic. It was sacred. She remembered the first time she truly embraced this principle. The voice in her head had screamed, "You cannot change your life alone. You need permission, guidance, luck, someone to approve." But she had ignored that voice. She had turned inward. She had built a fortress around her mind. And suddenly the chaos outside had less power over her. Napoleon Hill emphasized that desire is the starting point of all achievement. But desire without focus is a dream that fades. Elena's desire had been clear for months. To live a life of impact, purpose, and growth. To rise above mediocrity. To build not just a career, but a legacy. And today she saw the results of focused effort. She reflected on the lessons she had learned from history. From Harriet Tubman to Booker T. Washington, from Madam C.J. Walker to Andrew Carnegie, every extraordinary life had one common thread. Self-mastery. A relentless focus on the development of mind, character, and skill. The world did not create them. They created themselves. And so could she. Elena looked at her reflection in the mirror. She whispered softly, "I am the master of my destiny." The words felt heavy at first, then light. They were not just a mantra. They were a commitment. A daily promise to herself that she would not be distracted, swayed, or diminished by anything outside her control. Her power was not in her circumstances. It was in her mind, Her phone buzzed with messages, notifications, and news alerts. Once she would have jumped. Once she would have let these fragments pull her attention in every direction. But today she smiled, turned off the phone, and sat back. Her energy, her focus, her attention was her own. She had learned that distraction steals more than time. It steals life. She thought about the times she had doubted herself. The moments when fear whispered, "What if you fail? What if you are not enough?" Today, those questions felt different. They were not chains anymore. They were reminders. Reminders to act, to push, to rise. Doubt could still exist, but it no longer ruled her. Clarity and conviction had replaced fear. Elena wrote down 3 words on her journal page: focus, action, perseverance. These were her pillars. Every decision, every plan, every thought would pass through them. Focus kept her aligned. Action created momentum. Perseverance ensured completion. Without one, the structure would crumble. But together, they formed an unshakable foundation. She reflected on the people around her. Many were still chasing approval, bending under the weight of opinions, living reactively. They complained, blamed, and drifted. Elena had chosen differently. She had chosen self-discipline, self-responsibility, and self-mastery. And that choice had made all the difference. She understood the secret Napoleon Hill described. Opportunity and success always favor the mind prepared, the mind focused, the mind disciplined. Elena closed her journal and stood by the window, looking at the horizon. She could see the world outside, full of chaos, challenges, and distractions. But she felt no fear. She felt power. Because the greatest power is invisible. It is built in the mind, protected by discipline, and expressed through intention. And that power was hers. She whispered a final affirmation. I create my life. I choose my thoughts. I shape my destiny. And in that moment, she realized something extraordinary. Life was no longer something that happened to her. It was something she was actively building. Every choice, every moment, every thought was a brick in the house of her destiny. Elena knew the journey was not over. Challenges would come. Distractions would test her. Critics would doubt her. But she had discovered a truth that would never fail her. The more she focused on herself, strengthened her mind, and aligned her actions, the less the world could shake her. She was unstoppable. Not by luck. Not by chance. But by deliberate choice. She turned to her desk and wrote one final note to herself. The power to create, to influence, and to transform is within me. Nothing external can give it. Nothing external can take it. It is mine to cultivate every day. And with that, she felt a deep peace and a quiet joy. She had become the architect of her life. The captain of her ship. The master of her destiny. And now, it was your turn. Your life is waiting. Your dreams are waiting. Your future self is counting on you to take the first step and the next step and the step after that. Stop waiting for validation, approval, or the perfect conditions. The power to change everything is already inside you. Focus on yourself. Build your mind. Guard your energy. Commit to action. Pursue growth. Persevere. And watch as your life transforms in ways you never imagined. Your greatness begins with focus. Your strength begins with discipline. Your legacy begins with the choices you make today. The world will test you, challenge you, and try to pull you off course. But if you remain steadfast, if you nurture your inner world, if you build your mind with intention, nothing can stop you. Nothing can shake you. Nothing can take what is already yours. Now rise. Focus. Build. And create a life worth remembering. If this journey inspired you, subscribe to stay motivated. Share this with someone who needs this message. Comment below your commitment to focus on yourself and begin your journey to greatness. Your destiny starts now.